Israel Update with Gadi Taub and Mike Duran. Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. Every week we say it's a stormy week, but this is unprecedented. It's been 354 days since this war began. It is September 24th. I'm Gadi Taub in Tel Aviv, and in an undisclosed and uncomfortable location is Mike Duran. Mike, where are you?
I'm in an undisclosed and very uncomfortable location.
Again.
Yes.
I'm beginning to suspect it's always the same place. It's just changing the background.
No. Each one is very.
You're not? So, so this was a exhilarating 24 hours. I was at a studio yesterday on Channel 20 and Channel 14 when this was going on, and the mood has not been like this since the war began, not even after Beeper Night, or as you call it, the Grim Beeper, or as those of you who are partial to Arabic jokes, Eid al-Beeper. So after this...
Yeah, you have to explain that one. Nobody knows. Nobody got that.
Explain that one, yeah. You want me to explain? Eid is holiday, Chag. So it's the Beeper celebration, the Beeper holiday.
But it rhymes with the Eid
al-Fitr. Yeah. Okay, I forgot that. I forgot to mention that. Okay, so let's jump straight into the news bulletin.
Okay, so Gadi, you may recall a week ago when we had a podcast, we discussed Gideon Sa'ar and the imminent replacement of Defense Minister Gallant with Gideon Sa'ar. Well, that's all over, and you and I will talk about that for a minute after the news. But Sa'ar put out a long statement, basically discussing his resume and saying that he's the perfect man for the job, except that there's a war going on, and so during wartime he's not going to be the defense minister. Then on Friday, Israel launched a targeted strike in Beirut that assassinated multiple Hezbollah commanders, including Ibrahim Akil. He's the head of Hezbollah's military operations, and he was the acting commander of the Radwan forces. He's also was wanted by the American government for his involvement in the 1983 Beirut barracks bombing that killed American servicemen. Since the strike on Hezbollah commanders on Friday, the IDF has significantly ramped up its operations in Lebanon, bombing hundreds of Hezbollah targets containing weapons or rocket launchers. On Monday, the IDF announced that it had hit about 1,300 targets across Lebanon, and it's been urging civilians throughout the country, throughout the targeted areas, to evacuate. Hezbollah responded on Monday by sending 200 rockets toward northern Israel and settlement and Israeli communities in the West Bank. The New York Times reported on Monday that after Secretary of Defense Austin's call with Defense Minister Gallant, the United States will be sending additional troops to the Middle East. Pentagon Press Secretary Ryder said, in light of increased tensions in the Middle East and out of an abundance of caution, we are sending a small number of additional U.S. military personnel forward to augment our forces that are already in the region. Over to you, Gadi.
Yeah, well, that was very mild in tone, I have to say. Here, the tone is everywhere you go, the pundits and the anchors and the reporters, everyone has, I don't know, their tone is urgent and sometimes exhilarated. The threat of Hezbollah has been building up for 20 years on our borders. The last time that we had a real clash with them, which in retrospect is Israel's first war with Iran, albeit by proxy, was 2006. And you, Mike, have been saying on this show and elsewhere, I saw an interview you gave on TV7, is that the name? 7 TV? That said, sorry?
TV7?
TV7 that said that Israel doesn't have a real answer to the threat that Hezbollah poses. That was not the mood and the content yesterday in the Israeli press. The volume of strikes was overwhelming, over 1,000, I think over 1,100, and what the press here says, and you can correct me if you have other information, is that the precision weapons that Hezbollah has and the long-range weapons have been reduced to 50%, about 50% of their arsenal.
Maybe, who knows? I'm very skeptical of those kinds of statements. Let me say two things up front. Number one, what happened over the last week was amazing. Absolutely amazing, and it has changed the balance of power between Israel and Iran. I have no doubt about that. This is a major turning point in the war. It's a major turning point psychologically for the Israelis, but also objectively in the power relations between the two sides.
I have to confess, the two of us, we didn't see that coming.
I was going to say that. And I did not see it coming at all. And so I am not 100% confident about my let's say my concerns that Israel doesn't have. I have a concern that Israel does not have a path to victory. I have a concern, and we'll discuss that. We'll discuss that in a second. I have a concern about it. I've always had a concern about that. It's a lot less than it was. It's a lot less today than it was a week ago. But I'm not willing to abandon all of the concern that I had prior to these very, very dramatic events. I worked in the White House in 2006 during the Second Lebanon War, and the same exhilaration, the war opened with the same exhilaration. And I believed when the war opened that Israel was going to wipe out Hezbollah. And after 30 days of bombing, similar to the bombing we're seeing now, Hezbollah was still sending rockets at Israel. Didn't have missiles back then, but it was still sending rockets. And if you look back at the 2006 war, who do you think won that? Do you think Israel won that? Do you think Hezbollah won that?
Not exactly clear. I think it ended with an advantage to Israel, and we all believe that the Security Council Resolution 1701 spelled a turning point for us, because if implemented as the government here promised, it would push Hezbollah further, and it was supposed to disarm Hezbollah, which of course it didn't.
Yeah, 1701, which calls for a complete demilitarization of southern Lebanon, everything south of the Litani. And the disarmament of Hezbollah. I was in the American government at the time, and I can tell you that we didn't really believe that Hezbollah was going to be disarmed. But I think there was maybe a little bit of hope about southern Lebanon. Not that it would be completely demilitarized, but that Hezbollah's freedom of action might be curtailed somewhat. That didn't. I think I was always skeptical about that, if I recall correctly. But others were less skeptical. Anyway, the point is.
I was waiting for.
Yeah. Whoa! What happened? I just lost my light.
But we can still see you and hear you. So
can you? Okay. All right. So we'll just leave it like that. The point is that I feel like I've lived through this before, and I'm asking myself all the time, is this going to be a replay of 2006, or is this going to be something completely different? Now, I never saw the beeper, the pagers and the walkie-talkies. I never saw something like that coming. That was dramatic, and I think actually strategic. I wasn't prepared for the level of the level of operations yesterday that they've been carrying out. Clearly, the IDF has been preparing for this war. In the war we had in Gaza, they were not preparing for. For this war, they've been preparing for. But I still have questions about how they actually get to victory. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't think there's a clear path to that.
Well, we don't know, but the the mood of exhilaration is itself an important thing, because after October 7th, the sense here was, well, not doom, but at least gloom. And we felt that both deterrence and hope were seriously diminished. And now both deterrence and hope are at least back on the table. And that is a major change here. So I want to point out the importance of that. First of all, as you saw from your tweet, you wrote, I think, the most interesting thing about the beeper, the beeper attack. First, you said this initially on this show, and then on your tweet that went viral, is not exactly strong enough a term. I think it reached some 5 million views on that tweet. So that was a major boost to morale. But also, as you pointed out, it was an innovative way to weed out, to target directly only the Hezbollah terrorists. And I want to point out that this operation now seems to me also to take into account, or to learn from the lessons of how to fight with a force that's embedded inside the population. Because one of the most striking things is that Israel managed to induce a full exodus of southern Lebanon. You probably saw the pictures of the huge traffic jams of people just evacuating the area. And first came the announcement on our news, and then the IDF managed, or I don't know, maybe it's the IDF or the Mossad, managed to overtake a Lebanese radio station, and we started broadcasting through their airwaves saying, look, if you are in or near a building where Hezbollah has planted its weapons, please evacuate it to a distance of 1,000 meters, 1 kilometers, or else take shelter in a school, because we will not hit schools. And I want to point out how carefully this message is honed. This message is first designed to protect civilians, and we have no war with the Lebanese people. In reality, we have quite a few friends in Lebanon. Well, friends, at least friendly acquaintances in Lebanon.
People who hate, you certainly have lots of people who hate
people who hate Hezbollah more. Yeah, exactly. And so that was, first of all, a practical step, but also in terms of PR, it was preparing the ground for blaming whoever is going to try and use civilians as human shields. And secondly, we had amazing intelligence about where the rockets here. And you're right that this compares very favorably with the complete helplessness that our intelligence had in Gaza. And that is because, let me remind you of I think we screened this here with the Hebrew subtitles. Tamir Heyman, who was a former chief of intelligence, army intelligence, which in Israel is the director of national intelligence, just 2 months before the war, sitting where, Mike? In which think tank was he? INSS, which he also heads. And he was sitting, someone said on Twitter, anything that anyone says with INSS in the background is false. And so he's sitting there and he's saying, 2 months before the October 7 attack, and he says, I get a lot of hysterical telephone calls about an imminent Hamas attack. Apparently someone knew better than the intelligence. And he said, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. And then he said the most amazing thing, Mike. This should be a flashing red light. He said, I don't even need to look at the intelligence because I know what the interests are. A chief of intelligence telling you that he doesn't have to look at the intelligence. And indeed, we had no intelligence. And back to a favorite theme of yours to conclude this. This is Star Wars versus Mad Max. We had Star Wars. We were listening to Sinwar's telephone. So it's not that we didn't have intelligence. We had super cyber intelligence. But Sinwar knew that we were listening on his phone, and he talked basically about religion. when he wanted to pass a message, he wrote it on a note. And might I say, Sinwar is to this hour missing, right? We haven't heard from him in a while. You want to say something about that?
I could say, but I want to address everything else you said, but let's just quickly talk about Sinwar, and then we'll go back to the north. So Sinwar has been missing for there's been no sign of life from him for several weeks, and there's a debate in the Israeli intelligence community about whether he is alive or not. The majority opinion is that there has been no sign of him for a couple of weeks, but we cannot assume that means that he's dead. A minority opinion says he's dead. But of course they have no proof for that. The interesting thing here, from the point of view of the themes that we usually talk about, is that apparently the Americans are pushing the thesis that he's dead, and this is where the plot thickens. Why are they pushing the idea that he's dead? Because it allows them to then abandon the framework that wasn't working for them, and use it as a justification for a new framework for ending the war.
Or maybe, if he is indeed dead, maybe a different framework.
Well, but yes, but the thing is that if he's actually dead, why are the Americans pushing this thesis? Because if he's actually dead, they should have evidence of it, and they could present the evidence and then convince everyone. I mean, this is a fact. This is a verifiable fact that it's either happened or it didn't happen. So the fact that I think they're pushing. I have pretty good evidence of that. I would treat all of this with skepticism, but realize that this question of you only need to know one fact to understand how politicized all this is, and that's that this question of whether he's dead or alive made it into the Israeli media. How?
I don't know. It was
from Ben Caspit. Ben Caspit, the guy who broke it. Yeah. So you should already question whether.
Yeah. I'll have news from you for Ben Caspit about me. In Ben Caspit's Telegram. You'll be surprised. Yeah,
really? Oh, I look forward to that.
Stay tuned. Yeah.
You know the difference between you and Ben Caspit?
What?
Do you know the difference between you and Ben Caspit?
No, what is it?
He dyes his hair.
He dyes his hair. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, well, at least he has hair to dye, Mike. That's something. And one other thing I can tell you is that Ben Caspit is mashmitz. No, I don't have the word.
It's brags.
Not brags. They're mashmitz.
Oh.
Says bad things about me.
He denigrates.
He denigrates me, but he blocks me also, so I can't answer.
He denigrates and blocks. Okay.
Yeah. They once brought me on. I think it's the last time he learned the lesson. They brought me. He and Yinon Magal have a radio program where they are sitting in separate spaces, or else they would be beating each other physically. And once they interviewed me, and he opened it and said something like, here's my friend Gadi Tal, something like it was not friend, it was a positive word. And I said, oh, I didn't know that because you blocked me on Twitter. And ever since he likes me even less. But for Ben Caspit, everything is Netanyahu or not Netanyahu. So
exactly.
Enough about me and Ben Caspit.
We'll come back to you and Ben Caspit. Let's get to the serious business of the war. Here's the thing. My understanding of what's going on was really shaped of the key dynamics was really shaped by the April 14 attack by Iran against Israel, because Israel for two reasons was forced to just absorb that and do nothing in response. One is the fear of having its entire defensive systems overwhelmed by the drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles that Iran and its proxies have. Israel does not have an answer. As wonderful as Iron Dome and David Sling and all of these systems are, it does not have a complete answer to these systems
because of the quantity.
Because of the quantity. Yes, the interception rates that Israel has of these against these weapons is phenomenal, but some of them get through and they do a lot of damage, and that's why the entire north of Israel is depopulated, because some of them get through. So it's not we shouldn't focus on the interception rates. We should focus on the near impossibility of suppressing the fire from Lebanon. It's nearly impossible. That's the problem. The second thing,
but you know that they hadn't managed to get any rockets as they have been threatening for years to Tel Aviv. And apparently, at this stage, we're beginning to think that it's not because they're holding back. It may be because they just can't.
Maybe they can't. Maybe they can't. And maybe Israel's done a phenomenal job of hitting all these weapons depots. I mean, the number of videos I saw yesterday with all the secondary explosions was, it gave a big boost to my mood.
Yeah, but you never imagined that the 4th of July can happen not in the sky, but on the ground.
But exactly. But here's the thing: even if all of this is working to its beyond our wildest imaginations, then at some point the fighting stops. There's a ceasefire, and then Hezbollah rearms, and it begins all over again. So the question is, how do you bring it to an? You have to, in order to repopulate the north, and you have to. What does Netanyahu keep saying? They chose their words very carefully. The slogan is, "We are going to return the citizens of the north to their homes in safety." Right, and the in safety bit is the most important thing. They're telling us that they are going to convince the people of the north that they can go back to their homes without threat of this starting up again. And what did Nasrallah gave a speech last week, and he said very, very clearly, he said a couple of things. This blow, he was responding to the beeper, to the grim beeper, and he said, "Look, we have to admit." This was a huge blow to us. There's no doubt about it. But we have always known that our enemy is more technologically advanced than we are. We have always known that, and this is the situation. And there are going to be moments like this when we have to absorb big blows because they're so technologically advanced, because they have the West behind them, is what he said. They have the West behind them. But here's what I'm telling you, Israel. It doesn't matter how many times you hit us like this, you will not bring security back to the north. That's what he said. So that's the test. That's the test. And if that's the test, then we have to ask, how do the Israelis do it? Now historically, they've had a couple of theories about this. One is they occupy all of southern Lebanon. Well, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Or they're unlikely to do that. Why? Number one, and this is the most important reason, the United States won't let them. The United States won't let them. This is the story of April 13, April 14. It's not just that Israel was afraid of these weapons. It was restricted in what it could do in response to those weapons by American policy, and that restriction is still there. The second reason they're not going to take all of southern Lebanon is that it doesn't solve the problem, because Hezbollah just moves north, and then once Israel recedes from southern Lebanon, they then launch a guerrilla war against Israel. And the terrain in southern Lebanon, if you see it, it's a beautiful country, but the terrain is not favorable to a long-term occupation by Israel. And then once Israel recedes, they come back in. They come back in again. There's no way around this. You cannot control Lebanon the way you control Gaza and suppress all the fire. This is the problem.
There is no Philadelphia corridor.
There's no Philadelphia corridor.
Yeah.
So one of the theories that the IDF traditionally has had is that they will punish Lebanon enough. They will punish Nasrallah politically, not just they'll give him a real drubbing militarily. but then they will also punish him politically by, for example, evacuating all the population of the south up to Beirut and so on. And he will be politically weakened and embarrassed, and that will lead him to want to have a long-term truce. That's kind of the theory of what happened after 2006. Maybe you can get that. Maybe you can buy 5 or 10 years of quiet, and maybe we'll say that's enough. But it's a maybe, and we have to understand how Nasrallah is thinking about this. Nasrallah is thinking, how do I survive, and how do I continue to fire missiles and rockets and missiles even after the major Israeli operations are finished?
Yeah, let me add another factor here, and this is Iran. Iran has been holding its fire, and it's been uniquely patient and tolerant towards this escalation, and this is itself worrying. I think that Iran wants this to end with Hezbollah at least surviving and without this war spreading to itself. Because I've thought, and I think I've said so a few times here on this show, that there's no point in exacting a price from Lebanon, or there's a limited point in exacting a price from the state of Lebanon. The country we should be exacting a price from is the head of the serpent, and the head of the serpent is in Tehran. And there are a few options here. I know you're very pessimistic about the possibility of a war with Iran, but from the Israeli perspective, this is how many here think about this. We have the hourglass clock now. The sand. You corrected me last time. The sand is running out.
The hourglass, the hourglass.
Hourglass, and that countdown is to a nuclear weapon that Iran would have.
I think you'd say the sands of time.
The sands of time.
The sands of time are running out. That's good.
No, it
sounds beautiful. You'd like it. It sounds wonderful. The sands of time are running out.
Yeah, this is why I don't like it. It's too poetic for my intentions. So time is running out. It's Mission Impossible that I want, not Byron poetry. So
okay.
So the time is running out on the countdown to an Iranian bomb, and we have now an opportunity. What do I mean by opportunity? There is a chance that this war with the North would spin out of control enough to draw Iran in, and then there would be a unique opportunity for us to strike at Iran and maybe drag other powers along with us. So I'm sure this doesn't bode well with the piece we once wrote, Mike, together about give us the tools and we'll finish the job. But maybe we can get America, because the United States will not. I'm not talking about the United States sending in its forces to Tehran. I'm just saying that if there is a direct war between Israel and Iran, even a democratic administration would find it hard to just straight out support the Iranian side, right?
Yes.
So that, and maybe we have a very limited, a very short time window in which this can happen. Because imagine Biden's dream, or whoever it is that dreams for him, that this war now ends in a ceasefire in Gaza. Hezbollah will immediately hold its fire, and then de-escalation all around, and back to a temporarily peaceful Middle East. Then we would have lost maybe the last chance to strike at Iran.
Who knows what last chance, whatever. But look, the Iranian president is in New York right now, and when he did you see the statement he put out just as he was leaving to come to New York?
Mm-mm.
he's eager to start negotiations about the Iran nuclear file. So they stiff-armed the entire world up until now about their nuclear program, and now they want to have conversations. So he's sending this message of flexibility. He also said that he made a statement about how there haven't been any shipments of weapons to I think whatever it was missiles and drones, but anyway, that under him the shipments to Russia of missiles and drones have been have not taken place. Of either missiles or drones. I can't remember what he said. I need to go back and check it. But anyway, the point here is that he's sending all kinds of kisses and greeting cards to the United States right now. And my interpretation of that is that the subtext is, dear President Biden, please restrain the Israelis. And the Americans are they're like when Iranians do this, the American national security elite, and it's not just the Democrats, although it's primarily them, they behave like Pavlov's dog, right? And they immediately go to Israel and say, Israel, watch it. And if you follow the public statements, the Americans are publicly telling Israel not to launch a ground offensive in Lebanon. So
well, they've told us this about everywhere in Gaza. They didn't want us to invade.
Yes, and to your point, the Netanyahu and Gallant. Oh, we have to have a few words about Gallant before we move forward. Netanyahu and Gallant, they clearly recognize that that Joe Biden is a lame duck. There's a vacuum at the top in Washington, and because of that Kamala Harris is a non-entity. And so the American red lines can very, very easily negotiated, erased, and so on. But the Israelis are being very careful not to just flout the red lines. And that's one of the great things I didn't mention in that tweet storm about the pagers and the walkie-talkies is that in addition to everything else that's amazing about that operation, it also adhered to the restrictions by the Americans, because the Americans don't want to see a major bombing of the Dahiya of Beirut by the Israelis. They put a protective cover over Beirut. They put a protective cover over southern Lebanon from a land incursion. They put a protective cover over the Iranian nuclear program and over any attack on Iran. And so on. So Israel has to maneuver within these restrictions and negotiate them all the time and argue about them.
It was also, once again, brilliant to hit someone that's wanted in America.
Yes. Ibrahim Akil. Yeah.
There's a $7 million bounty on his head by the FBI for the terror attack on the Marines in Beirut.
I actually think I made a mistake. I think I need to go back and check that, but I think just to be the academic in me that wants to make sure every footnote is correct, I think it was for the embassy bombing that they have him the $7 million on him. But I said in the news that it was the Marine barracks.
But be it what may, the utility of this is clear. This is something the Americans would be hard pressed to protest, because this is someone they want. So there was a bombing in the Dahiya, but it hit someone who is wanted for crimes against American personnel.
And all of the strikes yesterday on ammo dumps, those are also within the they're within the restrictions of the Americans, because they've called on the population to leave. They're being very highly targeted. There's not a indiscriminate military action.
But we also need to remember that once in a while, defying the United States is crucial to Israeli deterrence. In fact, we began to edge back to deterrence once we made clear to our enemies with an attack in Damascus, an attack in Beirut, and we have not taken responsibility for the attack in Tehran, where Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas, was targeted, but defying American restrictions signals to your enemies that they can't safely hide behind the American wall forever.
What the Israelis have reestablished dramatically since April 13th is escalation dominance. And this is, I couldn't have predicted this. I hoped that they would move in this direction. I predicted that they would move in this direction, but I had no inkling that they would do it so quickly, so dramatically, so effectively. Now, everyone in Tehran, in Beirut, when they think about their next steps, they have to really worry about what the Israelis are going to do next, and they can see that the Israelis have all kinds of options that they on the other side do not have.
I'll just explain to the lay people in a language of lay people like myself what escalation dominance is. It's a situation in which it is your enemy that worries about further escalation and not yourself. And when you convince your enemy, then you have escalation dominance. So we are going to discuss Gallant, and let me start this discussion by entering the subject from a surprising point of view. I'm engaged in a Twitter war. I asked you to start the recording of this session late, and you couldn't because I was going to answer something. And this began with some short video that I made, 1 minute and 7 seconds, which discussed an amazing thing which people don't realize outside Israel. Do you know that people who participated in the October 7 atrocities, actual terrorists who participated, some of them are not affiliated with Hamas or with Islamic Jihad. And so by the Attorney General of the IDF's order, we are unable to attack them. We can only arrest them because they are considered civilians. That is, you look at this and you say, this is absolutely crazy. These people are not civilians. They took part in an invasion of another country. They took part in atrocities which are crimes against humanity. And then they retreated to Gaza. And because they're not card-carrying members of Hamas, we're not able to target them with Sikul Memukad, which is a direct assassination, direct targeting. So this obviously raised a lot of eyebrows, because if you think Israel is engaged in a war, people are dying every day. This is a small country. Everyone knows everyone. So you people are going to send IDF soldiers to risk their lives and arrest someone hiding inside a hostile population because you won't shoot them from the air because they are protected by the first protocol of the Geneva Convention, by the way, a protocol which Israel did not sign on to. So there was a minor scandal a few weeks back, or maybe it was more than a few weeks. It was already 2 months back. And a member of Knesset, Amit Halevi, raised the question in the Security and Foreign Affairs Committee, and then in the chamber, in the Knesset chamber. And Gallant, who is the subject of this discourse, evaded the question and basically answered like this. And this is really infuriating because people buy it. And he said, the Israeli security forces are determined to get to everyone who participated in the October 7 attack, and they will all pay the price either by death or arrest. So either by death or arrest. And I started tweeting about it. And of course, this is where I fulfill my promise about Ben Caspit. Then a whole shitstorm on Twitter began to attack me for lying. Why? Because the IDF spokesperson also supplied a denial. And the Nixon administration had this term, the non-denial denial.
Yeah.
That it's something that sounds like a denial, but is not a denial. So
there's also the limited hangout and the limited.
Yeah, I love those terms. They're amazing. And so our friend Nadav, I'm getting to Ben Caspit in a minute. So our friend Nadav Eyal, who is looking for opportunities, took my little video and said he asked he submitted a question to the IDF spokesperson, and this is what they said, and he quoted them, and they also said that we will that what the content of the movie, the content of my little clip was unfounded, and the IDF is determined to kill or arrest anyone who participated in the October 7 atrocities. So Nadav Eyal was parading around Twitter that he caught me lying. And this led directly to Ben Caspit, who said, you'll appreciate the Hebrew, I guess, because I actually asked an Hebrew, like a professor, an expert on language about this. שורה תחתונה, אתה ובנל ומגדולי מאחזי הדת שהיו כאן. Bottom line, Taub is one of the great conjurers, or it's a more pejorative word. One of the most what would you say a conjurer in a pejorative sense? Inventor of fake news, I guess.
Yeah, fabulous. Maybe I don't know what the.
But it's also very strange Hebrew, because we have me'achzei enayim and ganavei dat. I didn't know we had me'achzei dat, but whatever. This is Ben Caspit, and who are the people who are attacking me on this? These are the permanent protectors of the juristocracy, of the rule of the judges and the attorney generals and all these jurists who are ruling our life and are now condemning Israeli soldiers to greater risk in order to abide by a very strict interpretation of a protocol which Israel has not signed, in order, they tell us, to protect us from Hague. So they're sending soldiers to greater danger where they must die, but they'll be protected, they think, from the Hague. The Hague. Sorry, Mike, the Hague. Yeah. And so we've just seen a demonstration that the Hague is an anti-Semitic institution, and they will not care about the restrictions that the Attorney General of the IDF is applying to.
By the way, I thought of you on that note today, because in today's Israeli media, there's a quote from the Attorney General saying that a commission of inquiry about October 7th should be ordered by the Supreme Court, by the we don't have a Chief Justice. What do you call the President of the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Rather than the Netanyahu, because only if it comes from the President of the Supreme Court will it protect the IDF from the International Criminal Court, from the Hague.
It's much worse, Mike, even worse than my pronunciation, because what they're trying to do is they want a National Commission of Inquiry, is the actual legal term, which is by law appointed by the President of the Supreme Court. And people here are saying for a while now that whatever the inquiry is, it should include inquiring the role of the judiciary in tying the hands of the IDF. And
oh, wow.
And even worse, on inviting October 7th. So I have to open parentheses and say a word why this is connected to October 7th. And this is very, very present in our political discourse. The left is trying to deny it. The right is trumpeting this repeatedly. There once was a perimeter. There was a perimeter after or beyond the fence of Gaza by an area which was a killing zone. And this was the order of Doron Almog, who was the general in charge of the Southern Command in around 2000, I think 2002. And he ordered this to be a death area. Anyone who enters this area gets a bullet in the head. And then human rights organizations began to appeal against that. And gradually,
while Hamas would send quote unquote civilian protesters up to the fence.
This
daring the Israelis to kill quote unquote civilians.
Exactly. So what they did is they gradually eroded the restriction of not getting near the fence. And that is it. This is a very, I'll just say one thing about how tricky this whole argument is, because in the end there were appeals against the attempts of the IDF to shoot to use snipers against the agitators in the so-called marches of return. It's their conception of the right of return, which were getting near the fence, and the Supreme Court can hide behind the true fact that they rejected these appeals. But by the time we got to these appeals, the IDF had and the Attorney General of the IDF had restricted the IDF so much that it knew that this would pass muster with the Supreme Court. So the IDF already calculated what the Supreme Court would think, and in the end calculated its course in a way to fit the Supreme Court's supposed or alleged demands. And this is, many people say, how we got to October 7 and why we were so.
So there's no escape. There's no escape from the judicial reform question that colors everything in Israeli politics. Everything.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
So this ended with Gallant, and Gallant, as I said the same things in the Knesset about the directive of the Attorney General of the IDF not to target civilians who participated in October 7th. So Gallant is now suddenly back in the saddle and making hawkish sounds. But Gallant was just a minute ago the one willing to give up the Philadelphia corridor and even end the war in a partial hostage deal.
So there's a quote today. I was going to try to dig it up here. I won't bother, though. I'll just tell you. The gist of it was that people close to Netanyahu are now saying, sources close to Netanyahu are saying that relations that Gallant has made had a change of heart, is working closely with Netanyahu, and everything is great on both sides.
Yeah, it's great, absolutely great. Gallant had a very serious inclination that he was just about to be fired. Well,
okay. Let me in his defense, because I know that we're often very mean to him. In his defense, he did. Everyone agrees, including Netanyahu, that on October 10, Gallant put forth, and I think Herzl Halevi as well, a proposal to go north into against Hezbollah, and the Americans were against it. And Netanyahu was against. So Netanyahu sided with the Americans against Gallant and Herzl Halevi. I think there's no doubt about that. So the fact that they're now, I mean, if you go, all of this, my understanding of all this floating of Saar as the replacement for Gallant took place like 2 weeks ago at the end of the week. Netanyahu started to think about it, and then there was some kind of security issue that arose. Presumably, this is the beepers, and then someone, maybe Gallant, who knows, someone leaked the fact that Saar was being considered, and then Saar and then Saar pulled out. But what I'm trying to say is that the beeper thing here, which means the North intervened. And this has always been what Gallant wanted to do. So I don't think it has to be purely cynical when we say that they're marching in lockstep right now, because this is what Gallant feels he was there to do from the beginning.
Yeah, they might be. I'll just add in the margin of this that now some are saying that the whole idea that Gideon Saar was a serious candidate at any time was a Gideon Saar spin. Not a Gallant spin. And Gideon Saar is very friendly with a lot of journalists. So we don't know, because Netanyahu plays these things with his cards close to his chest. It's impossible to
and plays it extremely well.
Yeah.
Drives everyone crazy.
Driving everyone crazy, but in the end, making a lot of enemies. Saar was once an ally and became a rabid anti-Netanyahu politician for a long time. But in politics, everything can change. Mike, let's go to the to the comment section.
Okay.
There were a lot of comments.
Oh yeah, so the comments were amazing. It's too bad we can't go over more of them.
Just because it's such a pleasure.
Well, it's a pleasure because overwhelmingly people agreed that we can keep our I don't know what to call it, our light the light flavor we have here, the humorous
Yeah.
I don't know what to call it, but anyway, people like it. They said keep it, so that's good. Nobody said no. Straighten up and fly right, you guys. So that those people either got quiet or just left. But we had a lot more followers last week too, which is good. Okay, so we had a lot of comments about the slogan that we should what our
slogan should be.
Yeah. And so one guy said he was playing off of your comment about Canadians who are as Canadian as possible under the circumstances.
Yeah.
And he said that our slogan should be that we are as funny as possible under the circumstances.
That's not bad.
Yeah. I don't know if we can actually make that our slogan, but we should consider it as a kind of something
we shouldn't make a slogan of ourselves being funny.
That's a mistake. Yeah.
That's setting yourself up for.
I'll just use it from that. I'll just say to you, you're as funny as possible under the circumstances, Gotti.
Yeah.
So another guy from Australia said instead of your idea of cutting through the media bias, we should just say cutting the crap, which I kind of like, but also I think probably a little bit too harsh.
Yeah.
A lot of people liked gaming the algorithm or supporting the algorithm. I think also as a joke, though, not really seriously. I don't love, by the way, I don't love cutting the media through the media bias. I may end up, I don't have a better alternative. So I may end up having to accept it. But I'll tell you why I don't like it, because I feel like it's too politicized in a sense. It makes us political actors in a way. And because I think what I like about our conversations is that they are real conversations. The problem with the world today is that everything
there are no real conversations.
There are no real conversations. Everybody just delivers talking points all the time, and it's not just in politics. Even I can't turn on a movie without feeling like I'm being propagandized. I have a rule now, which is my 5-minute rule. And if I get a lesbian or homosexual kiss within the first 5 minutes, then I just turn it off, because I know that they've decided to go for to propagandize me before telling me a good story. If it comes in later, I don't mind. I don't mind having homosexual characters and so on. But if they're going to start with this right away, then I know that that's what I'm going to get the whole way through. Everybody is going to be a representative of some political position, and it's going to be lecturing me the whole way. This is so. We are a refuge from that, whatever that is. I don't know what it is.
Exactly. From, I guess, woke. But in my day job, I teach at Hebrew U, and one of the courses I teach is a workshop in screenwriting, and I tell my students, never tell moralistic tales, because structurally they are never good stories, because you always know the end and the beginning.
Right, exactly. That's all. That's it. There's no surprise. Like the minute that's what happens. 5 minutes in, I already know. Okay, here's what's going to happen.
You know the end. You know the end, and this is the killer of storytelling, because stories are always about surprising you, always, or else they're not a story. Anything else about the comments?
Well, look, can I let me talk about the slogans a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Because I sat and I noodled them. I'll just run through them really quickly. None of them are very good, but I just started thinking, how do you make a slogan? So one is you sort of just describe the thing that you're doing. So I said, one Jew, one goy, lots of opinions. Probably not a good one, but anyway, I'm
What's the ending again? One Jew, one goy, and
lots of opinions.
And lots of opinions.
So
Jews will get that joke.
I want to spark our audience. I'm hoping that as I go through these different types, I'll spark some creative thought out there. Another one like that was just, I thought, somewhat better informed than most people most of the time. Again, not something that's going to set the world on fire, but think about it. Then you have another one, which is your antidote to, right? So your antidote to media bias, your antidote to groupthink, your antidote to something, but we're not sure what it is. Okay, so think about that. If you,
I like that. I like that.
Another one is where you flatter your audience, right? So you say for people who, for people.
That's Haaretz. The Haaretz slogan was for years. Iton לאנשים חושבים.
That's
so for thinking people.
Right. Yeah. So for people who like sex and chocolate, here we are. You know what I wrote down? I said for people who actually read the terms and conditions. I don't know, but I don't like those people. But I don't know why that came to my mind.
No, it's a shame we don't have another show because it's a great title.
Yeah, but it's
not for this one.
Who actually does read it though? You don't want those people. And then another one is you start at where. Our podcast is where truth puts its pants on, where groupthink goes to die, something like that. Then the next kind you have is commands, like Nike's just do it, right? So put away childish things, listen to us and lose your friends, something like that. And then you have the next one, because you're wonderful, because you love sex and chocolate. And then finally you have the ones like coverage you can count on. So opinions on sex and chocolate that you can share with your mother, something like that. And then my favorite one I was trying to imitate, but I couldn't come up with anything. There's the slogan or the log line for aliens. I think this is the greatest slogan. In space, no one can hear you scream. So, but I don't know what the equivalent is for us.
That's a slogan we need, Mike. In Israel updates, no one can hear you scream.
Because
only we talk.
In the privacy of your own bathroom, where you listen to Israel Update, no one can hear you scream. I don't know. Anyway, I couldn't. These are. I got the forms down, but I couldn't get the content because.
Brilliant.
Because
this is very
a refuge. We are a refuge from groupthink, but I don't think it's not a great slogan.
But it's very stimulating. So I hope a lot of our would-be sloganeers would be able to play off these. And so now to the really funny section, the dumbest take on the news. What's your dumbest take on the news, Mike?
My dumbest take is where did she go here? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or as Drew Clavin, our friend, says, Alexandria occasional cortex. She says Israel's pager attack in Lebanon detonated thousands of handheld devices across a slew of public spaces. How do you say slew in Hebrew? Across a slew of public places, seriously injuring and killing innocent civilians. This attack clearly and unequivocally violates international humanitarian law and undermines U.S. efforts to prevent a wider conflict. Congress needs a full accounting of the attack, including an answer from the State Department as to whether any U.S. assistance went into the development or deployment of this technology. We talked about this last week, Gadi. This is such nonsense. They're trying to say that because the Israelis may not have had the name of every person who had the beeper, although I wouldn't I wouldn't put it past the Israelis to actually know who had the beepers, and because they were exploded in civilian areas, that this was an indiscriminate attack on I think the test in international humanitarian law is discrimination. You have to discriminate between combatants and non-combatants. This completely obviously discriminated. Yes, there were some non-combatants who died, but what you have to compare this to is not a perfectly executed arrest by a police force This is war we're talking about. You have to you have to compare it to other means by which Israel might have killed the people who were trying to kill it, and that would have been, an artillery attack or a missile from an F-35, and so
The
it's
way
just
people
ridiculous.
use the term international law and human rights violations are disgusting. They're using them unilaterally. I saw a piece in the Washington Post of some, I don't remember which pundit with an Arab name, saying that this is a crime against humanity or something to that
Yeah.
sort. So we
Well,
are fighting.
that's another. Some of them. So the proper place for the discussion of this is international humanitarian law, because that's the law about how you protect civilians in warfare. But some people are talking about this as a human rights violation, which is just completely ridiculous.
But also look at the asymmetry here. Hezbollah is shooting deliberately on our civilians, and we are expected to abide by standards so strict that if one beeper is near someone that is not a Hezbollah operative, then it becomes a crime.
That is the legal argument. I think the winning legal argument against what they're saying is that if a small charge, which is likely only to harm the person who has the beeper in his pocket, and we have lots of pictures of these things going off in areas, and you see that the person who's harmed is the person who has the beeper on him. If that violates the principle of discrimination, then everything does.
Right? Discrimination has no meaning. It
has no meaning. It has no meaning whatsoever.
Action.
Yeah, they're just annoyed that the Israelis were so clever to find a way to do this. By the way, the same people who say this, they're also the same people who will rush to say, when you in answer to what you brought up, the indiscriminate attacks from Hamas or Hezbollah, they trot out this argument, right to resist, which is in the whole point of this right to resist thing, which is grounded in the principle of self-determination, which is a very, very murky principle anyway in legal terms. But they developed that idea precisely in order to do an end run around international humanitarian law. Because if indiscriminate attacks are wrong, then these guys, both Hezbollah and Hamas, are in flagrant violation. But they don't want to bring that up, so they do this end run with right to resist. So in other words, they use the law purely as a propaganda tool, and they use it when it's convenient for them, and when it's inconvenient, they ignore it. You've muted yourself.
And they play to anti-Semitism, which is inclined to apply different standard to the Jews, but that's the definition of anti-Semitism. So my dumbest take on the news is incredibly dumb, and it's for Haaretz, which is the paper for thinking people. And I just
is that still their slogan?
That used to be their slogan, and my slogan for Haaretz, and I wrote it apropos of this. This is a paper for the retarded. Because this is Yossi Melman.
You can't use that word. You can't use that word anymore.
I can. So Yossi Melman is the political and security analyst of Haaretz, and he wrote that the targeted attacks on the leadership of Hezbollah are actually good for the organization, because they enable it to refresh their leadership. He wrote this.
The idea being that they had a gerontocracy running the thing, and the younger people were frustrated and their ambitions
exactly. But you have to know, Mike. I mean, but it's so typical Haaretz. Haaretz are never happy when Israel succeeds. They want Israel to lose. That's when they're happy. It's the only paper who had a more or less lauding piece about the imaginative success, the imaginative talents and the extreme success of the October 7 terrorists, Amir Hess. It's unbelievable that these people write in Israel. So when Israel is successful, they have something bad to say about that.
There's a whole line of reasoning going on right now that I'm not going to say from home because I have to work in this town, but or in that town. I'm not in that town right now. Where people are working hard to think, how do we get a success for Hezbollah so that they can have an
excuse to climb down from the
to climb down. We want to give them an off ramp. The same kind of thing was people always we as Americans, for some reason, we have to think about our enemies and think, how do we give our enemies something so that there will be a balance? I just want Israel to win. I just want them to win. By the way, on that note, I hope I wasn't a Debbie Downer on saying what the obstacles were, because I'll be very happy if they overcome all these obstacles. They may have a way. I mean, they've already surprised us. Things are going very, very well. That's what I want to end with. Okay, things are going. They're going very well. I think they're going very well. They're going amazingly well. They're going much better than I ever possibly imagined. But I don't want to just assume. I have one experience of gambling. I went to Las Vegas. I read a book about how to gamble, and I went to the craps table, and I told myself I also was going to hold myself to a certain amount of money, $200 I think it was. I was a kid, and I put a few dollars down on the table, and I started winning, and I won. And so all of a sudden, I thought, wow, if everything keeps going like this, I'm going to be a millionaire in about 30 minutes, right? And of course, what happened was in about 7 minutes, I had no more money left. So I just want to keep I want to test the positive feelings. I want to test them against reality all the time. Not get cocky. Do it systematically. Understand what's happening. There are real challenges ahead. That's what I'm doing.
But I think there's also an argument to be made for even keel. Don't be too cocky when you succeed, and don't throw your hands up in despair when there's a.
Yeah, totally, and especially in warfare. Look how much things have changed from week to week. Day to day since this thing began. It's
one day, Mike. We should look back on our first shows and count how many of them have some kind of variation in the title. Is this the end? Is this the end of the war? Is this? And that was in the first few weeks. That was the historical experience is that America is able to shut down Israel's war pretty quickly.
Right? Yeah, they were trying to. Look at, and that's these guys. By the way, there's a theory out there. I don't believe it, but there's a theory out there that this whole thing between Gallant and Netanyahu was actually a kabuki that the two put together in order to manage the Americans. I don't believe it for a second, but wouldn't that be funny if it was true?
One of the actors, I don't think, is capable of complicated kabuki. One is. Mike, I hope you return safely from the undisclosed location, and we are eager to have you back in your studio one of these days where you also have light. That would be amazing for those of us for those who are watching the video. Although this lightning was very hospitable to your suggestion about the can't hear screams in space and all the rest of it.
On Israel Update, no one can hear you scream. Okay, it doesn't make any sense, but I like it. Do me a favor.
It's so crazy that it might work. People are going to try to tune in to a show that says that. You'll get an audience like Orson Welles, War of the Worlds. Everyone will tune in to the Israel Update and then call the police.
I tried to. Anyway, we got to end here, but tell everyone to subscribe. We had I don't know, well over 30,000. Not on YouTube. On YouTube, I don't know how many we had. YouTube and Rumble, together we had, I don't know what, 15, 17,000 people, something like that.
And we also have the audio, so it's more than that.
No, but my point is the discrepancy between the number of people who are tuning in on YouTube and on YouTube, I can't remember how many we had on YouTube, but they're not subscribing. So if you if you watched us on YouTube and you didn't subscribe, then you have not helped us game the algorithm, and we're very upset with you. And
let's
no
make a
sex and
point.
chocolate for you.
Let's make a point of saying that at the beginning of the show, not at the end.
We keep telling ourselves that, and then we don't do it.
Yeah,
And also,
why don't you put it the first item on the news?
Okay, I will. And you also need to like the thing, and you need to. It's good to leave comments as well. And you can even leave terrible comments. Insult us. We don't care. Just leave a comment because it helps us gain the algorithm. All right, please.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike. It's been a pleasure. Let's hope we have such a good week by the time we meet again next Tuesday.
I think it's going to be. I predict. I mean, they know they have a plan now. They're running through their target bank. They know exactly what they want to do, and they're just ticking off the boxes right now. So I think all initiative is in their hands, and that's what feels so good.
Hear, hear, knock on wood. Thank you very much for staying with us to the end of the show, if indeed you did. And don't forget to come back next Tuesday, where you will have another episode of the show where screams are not heard.
No one will hear you scream.
Thank you, Mike. I'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.